Dear Europeans, I would just like to ask, what the hell is the EU doing on the New York Stock Exchange? Because Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, the president of the EU, basically, is right now in New York, on the New York Stock Exchange, on Wall Street, apparently talking about the European economy. And I just have to ask, why? Why is she in New York talking about the European economy rather than in Europe, rather than in Brussels or Berlin or Paris or Madrid or Riga or Sofia or Stockholm or Amsterdam or whatever, to try and fix Europe's current economic disaster? I mean, let's have a look at this. Daar is gezet alsof de EU dus op de New York Stock Exchange wappen is. En daar is gezet alsof de EU See, there she is, tweeting about the famous Wall Street bell, as if that is what's important for Europe, right? I mean, you see this, you see what's going on. Like, she's pressing the button, the bell, the European flag is flying on the Wall Street building, the New York Stock Exchange building. The European flag is right there on the wall, on in the building, Stock Exchange building itself. So I have to assume that the EU is now a listed company, which is listed on the New York Stock Exchange. I don't know. What do I have to see here? What am I seeing here? What do I have to believe here? What's the logical conclusion? Because what is the European flag doing in Wall Street? What is the European flag doing in the New York Stock Exchange? What is the president of the EU Commission doing in New York in the Stock Exchange? Why is she not trying to fix the mess that the EU is currently in? Because the EU is currently in a gigantic financial and economic mess. It's a disaster area right now. We know this. I mean, inflation is terrible right now. Prices have shot up in Europe on pretty much everything. Food, gas, water, all the basic necessities. The price has gone up. The actually purchasing power of the euro has plummeted, has gone down quite dramatically. It's like, it's not good. And we see that like the American economy is doing fine, better than ever, right? The Chinese economy, is going up and down, but they're basically doing their thing. They'll survive. The Russian economy is doing fantastic. Of course, also because of the huge capital input and investments, government investments due to the war in Ukraine. But they're doing fine. They're becoming more independent, self-sufficient all the time. And in Latin America and in African economies, we also see that they're doing better and better and better. They're basically just building up slowly, and they're becoming more and more independent of the European sphere of influence and European economic control. So basically, the entire world is actually not that badly right now, except for Europe, where the economy is tanking, it's crashing. And we see this, and I'm not the only one who said this. Even Mario Draghi, who is a former Italian prime minister and also a former head of the European Central Bank, and basically the architect of Europe's neoliberal economic order, he himself came out with a really thick report just now in which he states that if the EU keeps failing to protect the wealth of Europe and the welfare of Europeans, and if they keep failing to invest and keep failing to protect the European economy, then the EU is running the risk of losing its reason for existence, its reason to be, its raison d'être. It's losing its point. That is the risk that the EU is running right now. And so the EU is actually dying right now. And this is what Mario Draghi, confirmed European federalist, confirmed pro-EU politician, has said. And of course, his solution for this is more Europe, more EU, more bureaucracy. Also, his solution is that we, as Europe, in his own words, Draghi, he says EU needs 800 billion a year spending boost to avert an agonizing decline. Report by Mario Draghi calls for additional investment to regain growth and prevent social unrest. And we've seen that social unrest is like huge in Europe right now because citizens can see that shit isn't working. The EU should fear for its self-preservation as it faces a slow and agonizing decline, according to a hard-hitting report by the former Italian Prime Minister Mario Draghi that calls for an 800 billion a year spending boost to end years of stagnation. So we see that this man, who is basically the architect, one of the architects at least of the European economy, whose name is actually on the euro bills, is now saying that we need to invest billions upon billions, 800 billion a year, just to be able to save the EU. He also says that the EU actually needs to start investing in the economy, something that they haven't done for the past 5 years under the leadership of von der Leyen, who's basically just been effing about, to be honest. He also says that to do this, to save the EU, all the companies need to basically merge into bigger European companies, and all the European national debts need to be transferred to the EU and basically piled on the European national debt, which is already like 1 trillion euros. So there's one big national European debt, and then which we can then slowly pay off, maybe, hopefully. And that's basically a solution, which is crazy, to be honest, because it's still not looking at the fundamental flaws of the EU. For the fact that our democracy is still fledgling at best. We still don't have a functional European democracy. We also don't have, let's say, European culture, We have European culture, but they're all different cultures. And for some reason, the EU always keeps pushing that uni culture, that idea that we all basically exactly the same. But we're not. We're different. And that's a good thing. And this is insane because we have here these two people, Mario Draghi and Ursula von der Leyen, who for the past 5 years have been running the EU into the ground. And now they're saying that, it's not working, So give us more power so we can fix this, can fix the problems that we ourselves have caused over the past 5 years. This is crazy. And this is why the EU is currently dying, because its leadership, its unelected leadership, doesn't know what they're doing. They're incompetent. Let's be honest about this. They're incompetent. And because of their bad decisions, their terrible, ill-informed, stupid decisions, the EU is currently on its deathbed. It's dying. It's falling apart. And frankly, I think that's a bit of a shame. I actually think it's a shame, because I think that the EU could have been beautiful. I think that the EU should have been beautiful. I think that European cooperation is actually something that is a really, really good idea. I mean, cooperation, working together, building new things together. No more war between European states. No more war between Germans and French and English and Swedes and Dutch and Spanish and Italians and whatnot. No more wars, but cooperation, building together, working together for a new, better future. That is what the EU was supposed to have been about. But instead, it's not. Instead, we have a bureaucratic monster, a bureaucratic nightmare, which has completely destroyed Europe's economy, which has completely just wiped out Europe's economy, which has wiped out Europe's ability to compete with the rest of the world, which has basically wiped out Europe, which is busy wiping out Europe right now. And personally, I think that is a shame. It is such a shame, and something that we actually need to do something about before it's too late. And it might already be too late. I mean, personally, I think that it might actually already be too late for the EU. We see that the EU is falling apart, and I've warned you about this. I've already warned you what would happen if Ursula von der Leyen would be quote unquote re-elected. I've warned you about this. So we know this is not a surprise. But this is what's going on right now. This is what's happening right now. The EU is falling apart. It is dying thanks to people like von der Leyen specifically and her technocratic elitist friends like Mario Draghi, who are just mismanaging Europe right into the gutter. So that instead of the utopia we could have had, we now have a nightmare. And personally, I think that is such a shame. Such a terrible, terrible shame.